This episode is brought to you by Infuse, where agility meets scale, where compliance meets confidence, and where bold ideas become reality. Find the only place where card issuing and processing comes with happiness built in. The Infuse modular next-generation platform gives you exactly what you need, from bin sponsorship and scheme access to compliance and fraud prevention, while you stay in control of your customer experience and roadmap. Infuse, innovative card issuing and processing that fuels innovation. Discover more at infuse.com. Does moving money across borders feel scary? This episode of FinTech Insider is brought to you by 3S Money, a fintech scale-up that makes global payments simple, predictable, and human. With 3S Money, your business gets multi-currency accounts and local IBANs, enabling you to send and receive payments in all major currencies, reaching the widest possible range of destinations. You'll also have a dedicated account manager, a real person, not a chatbot, guiding you through every step of the way. Enjoy the best FX rates, fully transparent fees, and premium service backed by regulation you can trust in the UK, Luxembourg, UAE, and Hong Kong. Go global with confidence. Open your account today at 3s.money and find out more. Welcome to FinTech Insider Insights from 11FS. I'm David Barton Grimley, and today we are cutting through the hype to talk about what AI is actually doing for financial services, especially from a customer perspective. So look, AI is absolutely everywhere right now. It's on your news feed, your boardroom, your LinkedIn inbox, all buzzing with ChatGPT, generative everything, and promises of transforming the future of finance. But here's the thing. For all the noise, when you zoom in on the actual customer-facing use cases in financial services, there's not much to see, at least not yet, or at least not that we've seen. So the question today is, why not? Why aren't we seeing a Cambrian explosion of genuinely useful AI-powered products for customers? What's holding it back? What's working beneath the surface? And where might we go next? So let's start with what's real. AI is making a difference in a very few specific places. So customer service, for example, being maybe one of the biggest ones. We're going to talk about that today. Smart chatbots, virtual agents, better call routing, things like that. It's saving time, it's improving triage, sometimes even beating humans at speed. So that's all very well and true. And behind the scenes, AI is quietly automating processes, document checks, KYC, compliance, cutting down hours of manual work to minutes with fewer errors, in theory, right? So that's where AI is working today. The big question is, how do we take it from here and make it truly change the customer experience? All of those bets from those big tech firms on valuations, where do they come from? Are they going to become real in the future with the transformation that they're promising? So let's get into it. And the three people who know what's real and what's not real when it comes to AI is our panel. So let's meet them. First up, we have a FinTech Insider debut for Oscar Barlow, Head of AI Advocacy at Starling. How are you, Oscar? Welcome to the pod. Tell us a little bit up to what you've been up to.
Yeah, hi. It's really great to be on here. So as head of AI advocacy at Starling, it's my role to ensure that Starling's an AI fluent business. So I'm a software engineer by background, and I bring that training, that expertise to ensuring that we've got the technology and we've also got the culture and we've also got the processes so that Starling can make maximal use of AI.
Oh, it's amazing. It's great to have you on the panel, Oscar. And next we have a FinTech Insider debut for one of our very own, Rosie Lee, Senior UX Researcher and Customer Strategist at 11FS. Welcome to the show, Rosie. This is your first podcast and you're actually in the studio with me. That's awesome. Tell us a little bit about your role at 11FS.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Rosie. Nice to meet you guys. I spend my time speaking with customers to understand what they're trying to achieve, what their pain points are, what's stopping them from reaching their goals. I do things like focus groups, interviews, to test new ideas with customers. And then I take those insights to the banks and the financial institutions that we work with to help them design better products and services that make customers' lives better.
Awesome. Great. Welcome on board. And last but not least, a warm welcome back to Vivek Madlani, co-founder and CEO of Multiply AI. Welcome back, Vivek. Tell us a little bit more about what you've been up to since we last spoke.
Thanks, David. So at Multiply, we help firms launch scaled advice experiences, launch advice propositions, and essentially make advice more accessible to their customers. We've been doing it for quite a while. Now, and since we last spoke, we've been building a lot of the latest developments, whether that be agentic AI or whatever else, into our offering, and working with more of a variety of firms in terms of helping them launch advice propositions. So lots of exciting stuff to get into.
Yeah, amazing. Right, now we have a panel of AI experts. Let's get into the discussion. So Vivek, I'm actually going to come to you first as a kind of a founder and a builder in this space. Do you also sometimes, when you read LinkedIn, want to throw your laptop at the wall when you see the amount on it? There's just so much out there about how it's going to transform the world. And if you do also want to throw your laptop at the wall, what do you think is that disconnect between the hype and the reality?
Well, I think there's a few different ways of looking at this. I think one thing to say is that I do believe AI is being used quite a lot when it comes to helping people with their money. It just might not be where we most expect to see it. Anecdotally looking at some research and data from the likes of ChatGPT, from Google with their Gemini product, it does feel as though they get a lot of inbound queries, questions, whatever it may be, about finances, around what people want to be doing with their finances, and just getting help through that particular channel. Which, we're probably kind of looking out for it, more looking at what the banks are doing or what Life Goes and what other firms are doing. I think on that side of things, in terms of looking at what is happening from within the finance industry, we do see quite a lot of innovation taking place. It's just when it comes to launching kind of AI customer experiences, given that they are kind of more probabilistic than they are deterministic, there's just a huge amount of testing that needs to go into place before they're launched into the hands of customers. And it does open up a lot of these firms into just a larger surface area of risk. And a lot of this stuff is quite new, right? So a lot of the kind of cutting edge ways of testing and ensuring robustness are kind of quite new. So the areas where firms are looking to kind of launch AI and get it kind of helping customers might be a bit more in the background, where there are processes, where there's a human in the loop, where stuff can be double checked. That is certainly what we're seeing a lot more at the moment, rather than at the very, very kind of forefront, the kind of riskier sides of what firms may be doing with customers, like giving advice, for example, right? So that's kind of what we're seeing. I think there is a lot there that is changing in terms of customer behaviors. So if you look at what customers are using digital experiences for, compared to perhaps what they were using them for 2 or 3 years ago, I think there is a trend happening in place right now. And it's not just, by the way, in finance, but I think it's in many different areas where they are using some of these AI tools a lot more for expert input and guidance and help, right? Whether that be nutrition, health, help with their money, legal, like the number of people who've come up to me recently saying, they had to draft a doc or whatever it may be, that they're using AI to kind of help them out with it, right? So I think it is being used. It is perhaps not being used as directly as we would expect it to be used. But from what I see working with firms, I think that change is coming. And I'm really excited to be powering it with a bunch of firms from our perspective.
So it's off channel, I guess, as you say, right, Vivek? Oscar, come in.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think something that just like sharpens this sort of disjoint is that those of us who are working with AI every day, like it's so approachable, right? Like you can just get your hands on it and you can see what it can do. And it feels like when you're, this is in the consumer tools, but also on the back end, it feels like the future is just stretching out in front of you, right? You can kind of see where everything's going to go, and then you take a step back for a moment. I think like you put your finger on it, Vivek. It's you're doing your work with the AI. You've got this future envisaged in front of you. You're spraying your thoughts all over LinkedIn, and then we go, hold on a second. This is with 5 cases where a human is in the loop every single time, right? Talk about scaling that up into some customer-facing use case. It's a completely different animal. And so there is this little tension between what we can see and what we can feel when we got our hands on it, and then when we're ready to put something in front of people, as you've alluded to in your opening.
So we're not 100% ready yet, or even close to 100% ready yet, to let some of these things control our finances, which is, I guess, where the agentic component comes in. Even though, as you say, Vivek, people are absolutely using it off channel. I mean, I am. I mean, pretty much, just asking it bloody everything about my life, which I probably shouldn't be. But I guess that's what a lot of customers are doing. Rosie, I'd love to bring you into this conversation because, as you said in the intro, a lot of what you do is talking to customers and figuring out how they're using this stuff. I mean, what are you seeing people actually use AI for, or maybe the kind of firms that are launching AI experiences?
I want to, echo what's been said already. And in a sense, we're seeing this kind of mismatch between what banks are wanting to develop and financial institutions are wanting to develop, and what customers are wanting to use. I feel like a lot of people don't know that AI has been around for 10 to 20 years. It's been working in the background. It's doing those things that customers don't necessarily see and use. And now that customers are starting to see it more on the front end, and they're starting to engage with these tools and these chatbots more, they are starting to build an idea of what they want from this. So through research and the testing that we do, we're finding that customers are actually at the moment preferring AI tools that allow them to self-serve. So they're comfortable with automation, but when AI starts making decisions on their behalf, they feel like they're losing a bit of that control. So they're wanting to keep some of that control and use AI, but on their terms. They don't want the AI to take over completely and make the decisions for them. So we're seeing a bit of this mismatch between their attitudes towards AI and then the products and the services that banks and financial institutions are trying to offer.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. And actually, I think that's quite relevant to Oscar, your world in Starling to some extent, because you guys have just launched this spend intelligence tool, which I know is powered by AI in various different ways, and there's generative in there as well, which is interesting. But I think what you're saying, Rosie, is that I'm interested, but to an extent, I need the ability to say no, or to stop it, or to have some degree of control. Are you seeing that as well, Oscar, in some of the early kind of responses to what you guys are doing?
Well, what we're seeing is that it's useful, right? We can see that people are using it. I think that's great. I think that it's an important component for us in terms of bringing some more of these things. You sort of alluded to agentic use cases, for example. That's something we're certainly looking at. It's an important component for us in building the trust with the public, right? Because I think it's worth remembering that sort of my perspective as someone who's deeply into this tech, thinking about this all day. I love it. I love thinking about the tech, but the public is not necessarily there with me. And certainly, as you were just saying, Rosie, there's a certain amount of trust that has to be earned from the public in order to be able to show, look, we know what we're doing with these things, and we can make your experience better. We can maybe even allow a bit of semi-autonomous behavior in here, but we're going to have to take it step by step so that you're coming on the journey with us. We don't just want to be like landing you with a load of AI in front of you and you're like, whoa, what's this? And are you going to take decisions for me? No, we gotta take you on the journey. We really got to establish the trust.
Yeah, that makes sense. Even though I guess in some ways people do have that available to them via just, going on ChatGPT and uploading some documents and asking it to do stuff, for me. And it is kind of interesting to see how long that is going to persist, given some of the regulatory issues that come down the line with letting people letting people do that. I mean, the whole territory is quite fraught, to be honest. But Vivek, I want to pick up on your opening point about back-end operations and, how it is already been there and is incredibly important. I mean, from your world in advice, like how are you seeing some of these back-end, almost invisible customer automations actually make a change to the customer experience itself, even if they don't see it or perceive it?
Well, I mean, we're seeing some pretty significant benefits come through to those core customer relationships themselves, just by virtue of financial advisors themselves not having to do a whole raft of activities that they'd otherwise be doing. Even things as simple as having to write notes during a meeting, having the conversation transcribed, having notes automatically taken, having all the kind of information that's been collected, updated in those core CRMs. All the way through to having, follow-up emails, documents, key documents generated on the back of the meeting makes such a huge difference to the effectiveness of the advice service, just being present in the meeting all the way through to having follow-ups and the core documents in place, not weeks after the meeting, but days, if not hours. And that's really transforming a bunch of the firms that we're working with. I think beyond that, it is opening the eyes to advisors as to almost like what's possible. There's an advisor we're working with at the moment who they always had they had this kind of steady stream of customers coming through one of their channels that they just had to kind of turn down a lot of the leads coming through because they couldn't offer a service at a price point that made sense to those people coming through. But through working with us, they've actually made it possible. It's kind of ended up at almost like an eighth of the price point of the original price point of their service, offering a proposition, albeit through all of these kind of automation and kind of productivity enhancements, and making that available. And that is a total game changer for some of these firms now, and opening up the service of advice to what we hope will be millions more customers. So it's having a huge impact, not only in terms of the quality of the service itself, but also the kind of resulting price point it can be offered at. And in so doing, the kind of volume of customers that can now be served.
And in doing so, I suppose that opens all sorts of new business model potentials. If
Absolutely.
all of a sudden the price collapses, then pretty much anybody can launch something like this. And I guess that's the case for any industry. And I suppose why this conversation is so fascinating, because of the tools that this empowers us to do.
Correct.
Oscar, I'd love to, based on your background as an engineer, I'd love to get a little bit geeky here just for a minute and talk about the fine-tuning of these models. So whenever we talk about generative AI, we are relying on the veracity of the underlying foundation model to be able to provide that intelligence that is then serviced up to that customer. What are some of the challenges that you see in fine-tuning these models for understanding customer intent better? Or is it a question that they get it already? In fact, it's so incredible, it's more about the regulatory issues. Do you see any technical limitations around the ability of these models to provide the intelligence, or is the issue less technical and more just adoption?
Yeah. Okay. Interesting question. So I think for us, it's not a case of the limitations of the foundational models. For us, it's more about being smart about how we operate these things. So, for instance, one of the things that we're doing in spending intelligence is that you're going to say, I want to know about my spending patterns in such and such a date, right? And you're extracting the date from the text that the customer has given you. Well, throwing that at a frontier model is just a waste. Right? There's kind of no point. So in fact, what we want to do there is have patterns where we can say, okay, this is good for a fine-tune model, and we can fine-tune and we can get really good at date extraction in fine-tuning, for example. But this other thing needs to be delegated to a much more capable model. And patterns like that, where we're able to mix and match our tools according to the demands that we're placing on the model. Also, truthfully, it saves us a bit of money. And then the other question that we want to think about here is it's better for the environment. right? Like if we're using a smaller, less capable model for tasks where it's more appropriate, well, then we're going to be burning through less tokens and we're going to be, chewing up less watts in a data center. So the things are kind of all pointing in the right direction there as well, I would say. It makes us easier to operate, but it has these other benefits as well.
So it's multimodal. There's all sorts of different foundation like models that you're using and different techniques. It's not a one size fits all by any means. Rosie, I'd love to come to you on the maybe some of the practical examples of maybe things that are working or not. Like we talked a lot about how people are using it and how they're perceiving it. So if you look at examples like what Starling is doing, have you seen any other examples out there that are interesting that you like or that customers like?
Of how things are working.
AI-powered experiences.
Yes, there's an example from a bank called Bunk.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're in the Netherlands. And Bunk is doing a really great job of making their chatbot, specifically talking about a chatbot here, feel quite human-like. And making the customer feel a bit more in control through some clever features that we're not seeing other banks do in their chatbots. And the first one is reactive and revolving prompts that change each time the customer opens the chatbot in response to their recent activity. So customers feel like the chatbot kind of understands their needs and they can reach answers faster. And the second is that it's encouraging customers to provide feedback. And you might think that customers might find that a bit annoying, having to give that feedback. But it's actually helping customers feel like they're involved in shaping the AI and improving it.
That's interesting because certainly something I've noticed when I'm talking to these models myself is I do give them feedback. I will tell ChatGPT quite regularly that it's screwing up and that it missed something, and it'll come back and be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm terribly sorry. I should never have done that to you." It's almost as if someone dialed up the sycophancy of these models to make me feel good. But I think that's a very important point, that people feel that kind of that human contact. I mean, I suppose the final question that I'd love to ask in this section is, how do we avoid falling into a shiny object situation? And I think a chatbot is an example of potentially a shiny object. You have this thing, it's cool, it's got some intelligence behind you. How do you operationalize that in a way that people are going to continue to trust? I don't know if anyone has any. I'll just open it up to the floor.
Yeah, I think so. One of the things that I think is kind of a strength of the way that Starling operates is that there's a lot of empowerment in the tech team, basically. So that's kind of where spending intelligence came from, was inside the tech team. Of course, we've got a product organization as well. We're approaching these kinds of things systematically. But we've also got groups of people who are close to the tech, close to the data, close to the business problems that they're seeing every day and they know that need to be solved. And that means that it's quite possible for us to go from idea to prototype and then put things on the way to production quite smoothly. So to answer your question, right, how does this stop us doing shiny object syndrome? It means that the people who are doing the work are aware of the business problems and they're focusing on that, okay, and they understand the tech, they understand what it's for, but the tech is not the thing. Solving the problems is the thing, and they see that and they feel that. That's how it's working for us.
Yeah, you have empowered teams.
Yeah, that really resonates with me actually, because within Multiplier as well, like very similar stories of engineers working on certain parts of our product, and over time being aware of things they could use to like really improve our approach. And I think actually one of the great things about a lot of the tools out there and almost like the developer community is to build out an MVP can be quite quick. Now, I know what my engineers, and I'm sure Oscar will second this, is building out an MVP is maybe 5-10% of really the challenge. Like to get it into production is really quite difficult beyond that and takes a lot of rigor and everything else. But like just by virtue of building out that MVP, you can get a really good sense in quite a visceral way as to whether you're building something that solves that customer problem and even beyond that, does it in a delightful manner. Like whether you feel that real core product value. And it almost feels magical in a similar kind of way to when people first use ChatGPT or whatever it is. And like a lot of our innovation, a lot of the things we're proudest of have been driven by from within our product and engineering teams, being aware of what we're trying to build out and what we're trying to solve. And that's really cool to see if that happening organically from within the team.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and just to sort of develop the thought a little bit further. So earlier we were talking about how cheap execution becomes, right? With AIs, it's just so easy now to get stuff done. What that means is that you really need that empowerment, because you're no longer trying to figure out what to do to as great a degree, right? You're now figuring out, okay, like I've got this thing and I can make it happen. Am I able to move it forward? Are there structures in the organization that, given that I'm able to do this work, that are going to enable me to bring that value towards my customers?
That's such an interesting point, Oscar. And isn't that always one of the hardest things in an organization is just to get everybody to connect? And if you have the time to do that, then my gosh, what can we actually achieve? And I guess the larger the organization, the harder it is in many ways, particularly when we talk about banks. Brilliant. On that note, we're going to take a quick break here, but don't go anywhere, as in the final part of this podcast, we're going to be looking ahead at exploring what's holding AI back, but also where the real breakthroughs might come next. Stay tuned.
Hey, business owners, we know you know the importance of maximizing every dollar. With the Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business American Express card, you can make your expenses work just as hard as you. From afternoon coffee runs to stocking office supplies and even team dinners, you can earn miles on all your business expenses. Plus, you can earn 125,000 bonus miles for a limited time through October 29th. The Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business Card. If you travel, you know. Minimum spending requirements and terms apply. Offer ends October 29th, 2025.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, welcome back, everybody. In the first part of this podcast, we were talking about, is it just really shiny? What are some of the problems that we're seeing and some of the barriers to adoption and perceptions? I'd just love to continue that thread a little bit and talk about the risk landscape to some extent. So, Oscar, I'd love to get your point of view on this about, what have we seen so far come up in risks? We knew this was risky. We're now a couple of years into experimenting and playing with this technology. What are you seeing emerge, and how is maybe government coming in to support?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I think the thing that I'm seeing is that it's not necessarily the case that whole new categories of risk or issue are emerging, and rather that things that we already knew about are being amped up. So like a great example of this is in the realm of cybersecurity. We were concerned, for example, that people would use AI to develop new forms of attack or coordinate massive botnets, and that would be some kind of new form of attack, or it would amp up the traffic or something. That's actually not what we're seeing. What we're seeing is that people are using AIs to craft really great phishing emails, right, and send more of them. So these are problems that we already knew about, but we just have more of them, right? It's not a new category, it's an old category and a higher volume. And I think that's also, just to sort of to answer the second part of your question, what's going on in the regulatory space as well is that there's existing legislation, for example, in data privacy in relation to AI. Right? It's not the case necessarily that we need new regulation that specifically covers AI, because we have it here in data privacy, and we have it here in consumer duty, and we have it here in model risk as well. All of these things already address aspects of what's going on with AI.
It's more trying to figure out how on earth do you remain compliant whilst deploying some of these things. I mean, Vivek, what do you think?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Oscar. I feel like the FCA are like, I'd say they're almost on the front foot with a lot of this stuff. They've set up the AI sandbox. I think they're pretty forward thinking around making advice accessible to way more people, with the stuff they're doing around targeted support. And yeah, I think they've generally got a pretty sensible approach and are keeping a close eye on the changes that are taking place in kind of core customer behaviors in terms of the usage of AI and how that is likely to evolve over time. And they're kind of actively engaging with firms like us around kind of what the future could look like and how they need to kind of perhaps evolve their approach to kind of account for that. And I think one of the most powerful ways, like we went through one of the very kind of original versions of the sandbox back in 2018, 2019. And I think it's a really powerful way of like putting your proposition into market. And really, like, I think the key thing there is learning about it. Learning what's working, what's not working, what you perhaps need to build on top of it to kind of make it work before you then go on to scale it. So I think that's a really powerful approach by which to kind of promote and encourage innovation.
Yeah. And also in the UK, right? Versus other countries attracting people into the UK to build. I'd love to move the conversation back into the customer realm, as it were. One of the biggest themes that we come across in AI or otherwise is personalization. It's this idea that all of a sudden we have kind of like a new set of turbocharged tools that we can personalize our experiences to customers, and therefore through personalization, we can provide better services to them. Rosie, I want to come to you on this one. How much personalization do we think that customers actually want? Based on your research, have you seen people actually engage and use personalization really well?
Yes, I think customers want personalization, but it needs to be relevant to them, and it can't feel invasive or arbitrary. So, for example, if we're talking a bit about kind of data and how we're using customers' data, Luna is a Danish bank, and each time customers open up the chatbot, they remind customers how their data is being protected. So, and also in some testing that we have done, we tested the idea of a retirement score feature, but for so instead of it being like a credit score, it's a score for retirement planning. And when we tested it with just the score itself, it didn't test very well. Customers didn't really understand what the score was showing them and why they were being showed this score. But when we broke the score down into components and we gave them a score out of 10 for each measure, they then it tested better, because customers want to understand not necessarily, exactly how the AI is working, but what it means for them. So they're definitely wanting personalization. It's just how that is delivered.
Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense. And a lot of how that is delivered will be based on the tech. I mean, Oscar, I want to come to you on this one, because that maybe is some of the magic behind LLMs, is the ability to really just give that detail in a human way. I mean, certainly, the whole industry has been trying personalization for a very, very long time, and it's been extremely difficult to get right. I mean, how do you think about personalization at Starling?
Yeah, I think money is intensely psychological, right? In terms of how you conceptualize it, what it is to you. And so it seems to me that there's plenty of scope in the future to be thinking about using this kind of AI to help you understand your own relationship with money. And the step that we're taking towards that, I think spending intelligence is the first step towards that. It allows you to engage with us, with your bank, in a way that you choose, so that you can say, where's my money going? Tell me about where's my money going, so that you can kind of help yourself to tell yourself a story about what your money is for you and what it means to you, where it goes.
And do you see, and this is also an open question in terms of the modes. So certainly one of the questions that I get a lot from my clients and just people out there is what the modality of interaction is going to look like in the future. Are we going to be seeing more chat-based interfaces, which is how we speak to ChatGPT or any of the other models, or are we going to be looking at something that is still a little bit more visual, or in fact, is it going to be none of that? Is it all going to be like the movie Her, and everybody's just sort of talking to it, and You wouldn't believe how topical this actually is. I mean, this is the thing that a lot of people, particularly when they're thinking about designing user experiences, are actually thinking about, like, what is the mode? Because all of a sudden, we have tools where the mode is possible. I mean, look at the voice interaction capabilities out there are just incredible. What is actually, doable? And have any of you been thinking about kind of mode and how that works?
Definitely. Yeah. So I noticed in my personal use of AI, for example, that the thing that frustrates me is that I can't type fast enough for my thoughts, right? And I've been typing for a really long time. I can type pretty fast, but actually talking just makes the thoughts come out easier. And if we can build technical systems that can respond to meaning and intent, then voice, I think, is a natural modality for this. Right, and it could also be good for accessibility. Accessibility in two terms. First of all, for people who may struggle with text-based systems, but also in terms of, if I can understand what it is that you're trying to achieve, if I can understand what your job to be done is, then I can more accurately route you to the features that I'm already offering that you might not be making full use of. So there's that aspect of access as well. Yeah, I can certainly see it as a very useful modality for the future, and we've done some internal experiments along those lines.
Can I jump in there?
Yeah.
I would say two points. The first one being, as humans, we want to understand ourselves. We want to understand where we've been, where we are now, and where we're going in the future. And things that test really well with customers are projection tools. It's showing them the direction that they're moving in, and it's giving them those insights into themselves. And the second point would be, actually, I've got 3 points. The second point would be familiarity. As humans, we like things that feel familiar to us, which kind of leads into my third point about it being human-like. I think it might have been Google who tried to make an AI seem not human-like. They tried to give it a non-gendered voice, and customers felt very uneasy by this, and they actually preferred it to sound like a man or a woman, because that's what's natural and familiar to us.
That's so fascinating. The more human it is, maybe the more I might want to share my information with this thing, and maybe the more I might want to trust it. I mean, Vivek, have you been doing any sort of thinking around voice?
Yeah, we certainly have. And coming back to, I think, something that Oscar said, money, particularly when it comes to advice, the kind of longer term aspects of someone's finances, there are aspects of it that are very human, that are very emotional, that really transcend some of the more transactional aspects of finance, of money. And a lot of what advice boils down to is providing people with the confidence, the reassurance to do quite big, meaningful things with their money, aligned with what they want for their future, their hopes, their aspirations. And there's like so many components of advice, and we spend a lot of time shadowing advisors. I'm a qualified financial advisor myself, and reading reviews. Actually, we read tons of reviews of 5-star advisors to really get a deep understanding as to how they nail it. Like what creates 5-star advice? And a lot of that is fundamentally human. A lot of that is asking the right questions, really getting to know people, and then just really explaining the things that people need to do with their finances, the things that the products they need to open, so on and so forth, in a way that really resonates and lands with people. And a lot of that is just communicating really well. A lot of that is very much the human aspects of the service, and it's about as far away as you can get from the transactional aspects as you can. And I think a lot of the stuff around voice could really help there potentially. But there's a lot there as well in terms of being able to really connect with people. Like there is that familiarity, there is that tone of voice aspect to it that I think will really demarcate the kind of average products out there from the ones that really, really lead the way when it comes to these sorts of services.
I suppose this is all the experimentation that now needs to happen, right? Because what you're talking about is so fascinating. I mean, yeah, relationship management and advice is all human to human. I've sat down with a relationship manager once or twice, and I am divulging this information to a human because I know that they're a human and I trust them. Voice makes sense because it's unstructured. I don't necessarily know actually what I'm talking about, right? I just have a few ideas and I want to bounce some ideas off someone. So that works. And to what extent then will that then work when I'm speaking to an AI, no matter how eloquent that AI actually is? Will I want to have the same conversation? I think maybe, yes. I don't know.
I think we're beginning to see this happen with certain types of services that, even a couple of years ago, I would never thought would be possible. We're now seeing AI therapists, AI coaches. These are such fun, like there's no number crunching in there, right? These are fundamentally human services that are out there that are beginning to find some type of form factor in the digital world with LLMs, because there is an element of this technology which can understand language. We can understand the language, even the intonation of how you're talking, the kind of speed with which you're speaking. It can start getting some of the kind of non-direct verbal cues out of that. And there's also something to be said around when you're having a conversation, rather than filling in a form or filling in some numbers on a website, there is something inherently more informal about that, where you can be a bit more open and have more of a conversation around your future rather than kind of inputting numbers, and then it's the job of the kind of the product to take all of that fuzzy stuff and then map it onto numbers and dates into the future for you on your behalf, which is what great advisors do. But it's bringing it more in line with that kind of form factor that has worked for many years now.
Yeah, it's so fascinating how people are actually using this. There's also AI relationships, which is a rabbit hole we won't go down, and it's really weird. Rosie, I want to bring you in.
I know people that use ChatGPT, for example, for kind of like therapy, like you were saying, Vivek, for asking questions about themselves and learning in that way. But I think when it comes to banking and using your banking app, I think that customers aren't quite there. They see banks and financial institutions need to build trust with their customers, and I don't think that they quite have that yet. And trust is built in layers. First, to gain trust in the provider, then the brand, and then the product or the service. And financial institutions need to work harder because of the size and the complexity of the transactions. So this, I think, will be the challenge for banks and financial institutions, is to gain customers' trust. And I think we can do this through familiarity and by making it feel natural and human. But I think also giving customers some of the control and explaining why things are done. For example, if we're talking about agentic AI and AI taking actions on behalf of the customer, maybe it explains, hey, I've seen that you move money from this pot to this pot on this particular day every month. I've done it for you, but would you like to reverse this action?
Right.
So it's bringing the customer in and giving them back some of that control.
Making sure they always know they can control the bot. And I suppose a lot of what you're saying, Rosie, backs up, Oscar, your point about step by step. Do that first thing, build that trust, and then go deeper and deeper. And actually, what I like to end this podcast on that note and go around the table and say, what would be the next thing? What is that next step that each of you are seeing. So Oscar, for example, what looks realistic for you guys in the next 12 to 18 months just off the back of spend intelligence?
I mean, I think it is what we've been talking about in terms of agentic AI and putting that into customers' hands. That's definitely the direction we're headed.
Wow, that's so interesting. So you actually think like customer-facing agents, they're on the roadmap somewhere?
I think we can do that. I think what we've shown with spending intelligence is that we can put AI into customers' hands, and they appreciate it, and we can make it work. And I see no reason for us not to take the next step.
Awesome. Vivek?
Yeah, I think the next 12 to 18 months will be really exciting for the world of advice. I think, as I mentioned earlier, there already are new propositions being launched from within the advice industry, from within wealth management, which I find really exciting. But beyond that, there are a bunch of firms out there who are now looking at genuinely scaled advice offerings, where they're looking to be really ambitious and provide advice to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. And I think there'll be a real kind of material inflection point in the next 12 to 18 months, where I think some of these experiences will basically pass the Turing test.
Yeah.
For the equivalent of a Turing test for an advisor.
Terrifying.
And a lot more people will start deriving their confidence and reassurance from these sorts of experiences, and I find that really exciting.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's an amazing time now. And Rosie, to you for the final word, and maybe a slight twist for you. I mean, if customers were to ask for one feature from AI, what's the one thing that they would want it to do? Is it control, or is it something else, do you think?
I think, as Oscar said, it is agentic AI is the future. Banking has evolved massively. We've moved from going into the branch to process a check to using ATMs to online banking, and then banking apps that are 24/7 service. And we're now at a time where customers are starting to be able to use AI to automate their financial management. But I think once customers get used to this automation, the biggest value is actually going to come from it helping customers to make decisions in decision making. I think that's where the real value will come from. And I think the challenge for banks and financial institutions is kind of becoming a partner or an assistant for customers to help them focus on their long-term goals and less on their day-to-day financial management.
Amazing. And on that note, that wraps up today's discussion. To end, where can people find out more about you, Oscar?
I would say the best place is probably LinkedIn. So look me up, Oscar Barlow. I'm pretty much always up for chats, so reach out to me.
Awesome. And Vivek?
Yeah, similarly, you can hit me up on LinkedIn. And on our website, we've got a few white papers we've published around AI and advice. There was one more recently around AI agents. So if you want to find out more about what we're up to, definitely download the white papers.
It's a great paper, by the way. Definitely download it. And Rosie?
I guess I'll have to say LinkedIn as well, but of course, 11FS.
Amazing. And you can find me on LinkedIn also at David BG. And I don't yet have a deep fake that you can talk to, but maybe someone can go away and do that, and I can figure out how I feel about it. Thanks for listening. If you like what you've heard, follow our podcast and don't forget to leave us a review. It helps us to make it better and helps others find the show. As always, if you want to join the conversation, find us on social media. Just search for 11FS or FinTech Insider, or email podcasts@11fs.com. Thanks very much and goodbye.